I thought he saved my life until a nurse showed me the text on his phone. The message said, "Make it look like she didn't make it." The man I loved, the man I trusted with everything, had planned my death. I woke up in the hospital thinking I was lucky to be alive, but that moment changed everything. Tonight, I'll tell you the story of betrayal, fear, and the quiet strength it took to survive the person I trusted the most. Would you have the courage to face the truth, even if it's someone you loved?
They said he saved my life, but the nurse's eyes told me something else. The first thing I remember was the smell. That sharp, sterile scent of disinfectant mixed with something faintly metallic. My throat burned, my chest felt heavy, and when I tried to breathe, it came out in small, uneven gasps. I blinked against the too white ceiling above me, and for a second, I couldn't remember where I was. Then I heard his voice. Soft, concerned, familiar. "Thank God you're awake," Daniel whispered, his fingers wrapping around mine. "You scared me to death, baby." His touch was warm, reassuring, but there was something else. A tremor in his voice, maybe? I couldn't tell. My head throbbed too much to think clearly. The nurse adjusted my IV and smiled at me with that professional kindness nurses are trained to give. But when her eyes flicked briefly toward Daniel, something flickered there. Something I didn't understand then. A mixture of pity and hesitation. "What happened?" I managed to croak out. "You fainted at home," Daniel said quickly. "Hit your head on the counter. I found you on the kitchen floor. I called the ambulance just in time." He brushed my hair away from my forehead, and I tried to smile. He'd saved me. My husband. The man I loved for nearly 8 years had saved my life. At least, that's what I thought. The first few days in the hospital passed in a blur of painkillers, beeping monitors, and late-night checkups. Daniel was there, always sitting by my side. Sometimes he read aloud from my favorite mystery novel. Sometimes he just held my hand. He looked tired, dark circles under his blue eyes, stubble shadowing his jaw. "I didn't sleep the first night," he said once. "I thought I was going to lose you." And I believed him. After all, that's who Daniel was. Dependable, calm, protective. We'd been married for almost 8 years, and while we had our share of disagreements, I never doubted his love. We met in the most ordinary way. A rainy Tuesday, both of us waiting for the bus, both of us late for work. He'd offered me his umbrella, and I remember thinking, that's the kind of man who doesn't let people drown in the rain. That kindness was what drew me to him, and what made me stay. Our life together wasn't perfect, but it was ours. A cozy house on Maple Street, lazy Sunday breakfasts with burnt pancakes and laughter, evening walks around the neighborhood, fingers entwined. We used to talk about having kids someday, but lately Daniel had seemed distant about it. He said money was tight, that work was stressful, that he just wasn't ready. I didn't push it. Because when he smiled, when he said he loved me, I still felt like the luckiest woman alive. But lying there in that hospital bed, watching him scroll endlessly through his phone when he thought I was asleep, I felt a small unease crawl under my skin. It wasn't jealousy, not exactly. It was distance, a kind of emotional quiet that hadn't been there before. When the nurse came in to check my vitals one night, Daniel had stepped out to take a call. I caught a glimpse of his face through the glass window, tense, animated, whispering. The nurse, whose badge read Lydia, noticed my eyes following him. "You're lucky he found you when he did," she said softly. I smiled weakly. Yeah, that's what everyone keeps saying. Lydia hesitated, then pressed her lips together, as if holding back a thought. "If you need anything, anything at all, just press that button, okay?" There was something in her tone, protective, almost maternal. It made me uneasy, but I didn't ask. When Daniel came back, he said his boss had called. "Work crisis," he muttered, slipping his phone into his pocket. He kissed my forehead and smiled. "Don't worry about me, okay? Just focus on getting better." But even through the fog of medication, I noticed his hands were shaking. A few days later, they said I could be discharged soon. Daniel looked relieved. "Finally," he said with a smile. "I'll make you that soup you love, just like old times." But when I looked at him then, something strange flickered in his expression. It was gone too fast to name, like a shadow moving behind glass. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing his voice in my head. "You scared me to death." And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that his fear had been for something else. The next morning, Lydia came in earlier than usual. She checked my IV, looked around, then leaned slightly closer. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Can I ask you something, Mrs. Carter?" "Of course." Her eyes darted toward the door. "Your husband, he's been staying in your room most nights, right?" "Yes," I said, confused. "Why?" She hesitated, her hand tightening on the rail of my bed. "Maybe it's nothing," she murmured, "but I think you should see something." She slipped her phone from her pocket and showed me the screen. At first, I thought I was seeing things. A text message, time-stamped the night I was brought in. It was sent from Daniel's phone. The message read, "Make it look like she didn't make it." My heart stopped. The room seemed to tilt. My vision blurred. I stared at the message, my brain refusing to connect the words with the man I'd loved. The man sitting right now in the hospital cafeteria, drinking coffee and waiting for me to come home. My throat felt dry as sandpaper. Are Are you sure that came from him?" I whispered. The nurse's voice was steady. "I'm so sorry, but I couldn't keep quiet." And that's when everything inside me cracked. The man I thought had saved me might have been trying to end me. I couldn't breathe. My pulse pounded in my ears so hard it drowned out every sound in that sterile room. The phone screen glowed in my shaking hands, that one line burning into my memory like a scar. "Make it look like she didn't make it." Those 8 words destroyed 8 years of my life in an instant. I looked at that Lydia, her expression tight with sympathy, but shadowed by fear. "You have to promise me,"
she whispered. Don't confront him yet. Not until you're somewhere safe. Safe. It was such a strange word to hear, because for the first time I realized home, the place I'd always thought of as my safety, might be where my death had been planned. The day passed in a blur. Daniel came back with flowers, bright yellow tulips, my favorite. He smiled, leaned in to kiss my cheek, and for a second, I almost let myself forget. Almost. But every touch felt colder now. Every word sounded rehearsed. Hey, what's wrong? He asked when he saw my pale face. You look spooked. I forced a weak smile. Just tired. He reached out, brushing his thumb across my wrist, the same hand that had texted that message. My stomach turned. That night, Lydia stayed late. She moved quietly around my room, checking vitals that didn't need checking. I could tell she was trying to make sure Daniel didn't stay long. Visiting hours are over, she reminded gently when he refused to leave. He sighed. Can't I just stay a little longer? She needs me. Her tone stayed polite, but firm. She needs rest. When he finally left, she turned to me and said, I asked my friend in EMS to forward the full message thread. If he's been planning something, we'll know soon. I nodded, though my mind was spinning. I didn't want to believe it. Not Daniel, not my husband. He could be distant, cold sometimes, but murder? No. There had to be an explanation. Didn't there? The next morning, the EMS friend came by quietly during shift change. Lydia closed the curtain, and the man, tall, tired, mid-30s, handed her his phone. Here, he said, his voice low. I saved the screenshots. Lydia handed me the phone. The conversation was between Daniel and someone saved as MP Contract. It started weeks before my collapse. Daniel, she has been asking too many questions about the savings account. MP, then do it before she finds out. Daniel, can't risk suspicion. Needs to look like an accident. My throat went dry. My name was never mentioned, but it didn't have to be. I knew. There were later messages, the most recent from that night. Daniel, it's done. She's on the floor. Make it look like she didn't make it. The phone slipped from my hand and hit the blanket with a dull thud. I heard myself whisper, "Oh my God." Lydia caught my arm gently. You can't stay here once he knows you've seen this. We'll get security to move you to a different ward tonight. But my mind was a hurricane of memories. The dinners, the laughter, the promises. I thought of his hand in mine when we said our vows, in sickness and in health. How cruelly ironic that sounded now. When Daniel came back that afternoon, his smile didn't reach his eyes. Hey, beautiful, he said softly. You're looking better. Ready to go home tomorrow? I nodded automatically, my lips trembling. He took my hand. I missed you. The house feels empty without you there. His fingers traced slow circles on my skin, and I had to fight not to recoil. He leaned in close, Once you're home, I'll take care of everything. You won't have to worry about a thing. The way he said it, you won't have to worry about a thing, sent a cold shiver down my spine. That night, Lydia moved me to a private recovery ward. Officially, you're being monitored for observation, she whispered. Unofficially, no one tells your husband where this room is. She gave me her phone, her personal one. If anything happens, if he shows up, call me. For the first time, I saw fear on her face too. I didn't sleep at all that night. My mind kept replaying everything. The week before my collapse, Daniel had been cooking dinner. I remember the smell of the soup, how bitter it tasted that night. He'd said it was just new seasoning. I'd eaten barely a few spoonfuls before my stomach twisted, and I'd gone to bed early. There was a pause. Then his voice lowered, not angry, but too controlled. No, Claire, I think it's best you come home. You need rest, and I'll take care of you. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a command. And in that moment, I knew if I went home, I might never come back. That was the night I woke up on the kitchen floor. Had he poisoned me? Was that why the paramedics came? 1,000 small memories came back, each one now colored with suspicion. How he'd stopped me from seeing our bank statements. How he'd said life insurance was just a precaution. How he told our neighbor, if anything ever happens to her, I'll never recover. How perfectly he'd rehearsed his grief. By morning, Lydia returned with a grim expression. The hospital administrator's been notified, but you need to be careful. If he gets suspicious, he could disappear before the police have enough. My voice cracked. Disappear? You mean? She nodded. People like that don't wait around. I stared at my trembling hands. I don't even know why. She hesitated. Could be money. Could be someone else. And when she said that, I felt something click. A memory buried deep in the fog of my denial. A woman's voice. A few months ago, Daniel had started working late. He'd come home smelling faintly of vanilla perfume. I'd asked him once, jokingly, "Since when do accountants wear Chanel?" He laughed, but his eyes hadn't. "You're imagining things, Claire." I wanted to believe him. God, I needed to believe him. But now, the betrayal wasn't just about my life. It was about my trust, my love, everything I had given him so freely. Lydia touched my shoulder gently. Do you have anyone else you can trust? Family, friend? I shook my head. My parents were gone, my sister lived across the country, and Daniel had slowly distanced me from everyone else. He said people were toxic, I murmured. He said he just wanted it to be us. She sighed, sadness clouding her face. That's how they isolate you. Before she left that morning, she pressed something into my palm, a small USB drive. I copied the messages and security footage from the night you were admitted, she said. If anything happens, give this to the police. I wanted to thank her, to tell her she might have just saved my life, but all I could do was cry silently as she walked out of the room. That afternoon, Daniel called. "Hey, baby," he said, his voice sweet and calm. "The doctor said you might come home tomorrow. I'll be waiting right outside." I hesitated, my hand shaking as I held the phone. "Daniel," I said slowly, "what if I need to stay a little longer?" That night, I stared at the ceiling in the dim light of the hospital room, the beeping of machines echoing like a metronome of dread. Every sound outside my door, a footstep, a whisper, the roll of a cart, made my heart lurch. I clutched the little USB Lydia had given me under my blanket like a lifeline. Sleep never came. My mind was too loud, screaming questions, replaying memories, twisting through every word Daniel had ever said. When did love turn into danger? When did his arms, the same arms that once held me after nightmares, become the threat itself? By sunrise, I had a plan. I didn't want to just hide. I wanted proof. When Lydia came in for morning rounds, I told her quietly, "I'm going to talk to him, but not alone." She frowned. "Claire, that's risky." "I need to hear it from him," I said. "I need to know why." After a long pause, she nodded slowly. "All right, I'll stay close. We'll keep your room under silent observation. Security can monitor through the cameras." We both knew it was dangerous, but something inside me, maybe the part that still loved him, needed to see if there was any trace of truth left in his eyes. When Daniel arrived that afternoon, the air in the room shifted. He was dressed immaculately, dark slacks, crisp shirt, the faint scent of his cologne preceding him. His smile was warm, almost tender. "You look better," he said softly, setting a small box of chocolates on the table. "Thanks," I whispered. He sat down beside my bed, his hand brushing mine. "You scared me, you know. I thought I was going to lose you." The words might have moved me once. Now they sounded rehearsed. "Did you?" I asked, quietly. "Did you think you'd lose me?" He looked startled. "Of course I did. Why would you even—" I reached for the hospital table, where I had placed a folded printout, one of the screenshots from his text messages. I slid it toward him. For a second, confusion flickered across his face, then his eyes went wide. "Where did you get this?" His voice dropped, sharp and low. "Answer me, Daniel," I said, my voice trembling, but steady enough. "What does it mean? Who's MP? And why were you texting him that I shouldn't make it?" His face drained of color. Then just as quickly, his expression hardened. "You shouldn't believe everything you see," he said quietly, too calmly. "Daniel," I whispered, "don't do that. Don't lie now." He leaned back in the chair, exhaling. "You were never supposed to see that." Something inside me cracked at those words. "So it's true," I said faintly. "You tried to kill me." He rubbed his face with both hands, shaking his head. "You don't understand. It wasn't supposed to go that far. I just wasn't supposed to go that far." My voice rose despite myself. "Daniel, you wanted me dead." His eyes flashed, not with guilt, but frustration. "You left me no choice." The room seemed to shrink around me. "No choice? What are you talking about?" He stood up abruptly, pacing. "You were going to ruin everything. The money, the deal. You kept asking questions you shouldn't have. I told you to trust me." My throat tightened. "The savings account?" He nodded slowly. "I took it, all of it, and I invested it. But things went wrong. I owed people, dangerous people. They wanted payment. If you were gone,
Your insurance would have covered everything." The words didn't sound real. My husband, the man I'd loved, cooked for, dreamed with, had turned me into an insurance payout. "You could have just asked for help," I said softly. "I would have forgiven you." He stared at me, his face unreadable. "Forgiveness doesn't pay debts." There was a sound outside, the faint creak of the hallway door, and he turned sharply. His tone dropped, almost a whisper. "You shouldn't have told anyone." I froze. "What?" He moved closer, his hand slipping into his pocket. I couldn't see what he was reaching for, but every instinct screamed danger. "Daniel, stop!" Before I could finish, the door swung open. Lydia stood there, flanked by 2 hospital security officers. "Step away from her," she said firmly. Daniel's face went blank. "What is this?" "Mr. Clark, we need to ask you to come with us." He looked at me, that same charming smile returning like a mask snapping back into place. "You really think they'll believe you over me?" he said softly. "You're sick, Claire. Delusional. I've been telling them that for weeks." And then I understood. He'd been setting this up even before my collapse. He'd painted me as unstable, paranoid. He'd wanted the world to think I'd done this to myself. The guards escorted him out, his protests echoing down the hallway. I sat there frozen, my chest tight, tears running silently down my cheeks. Lydia came to my side, her hand warm on mine. "It's over," she whispered. "He can't hurt you now." But I wasn't sure I believed her, because men like Daniel, men who could plan and smile through murder, didn't just disappear when they got caught. And part of me feared he wasn't done yet. 2 days later, Detective Morrison came to see me. A large, calm man with kind eyes and a notebook that looked too small for all the evil it probably recorded. "We've reviewed the evidence your nurse provided," he said gently. "The messages, the bank records, the footage, it's solid. He'll face charges for attempted murder and fraud." I nodded, but I couldn't find words. He hesitated, then added, "There's one more thing. We found large cash transfers to a woman named Megan Pierce. Ring any bells?" My stomach dropped. MP. It wasn't a contract killer. It was her. The woman whose perfume I'd smelled on him. I turned away, staring out the window. Outside, the rain had begun to fall, soft, steady, cleansing. "He planned my death," I whispered, "with her help." The detective nodded slowly. "Looks that way, but he didn't succeed. You're still here, and that's what matters now." He was right. But surviving wasn't the same as living. Not yet. That night, I asked Lydia if I could go outside for a few minutes. She helped me into a wheelchair and pushed me to the hospital garden. Quiet, full of white lilies, and the faint hum of crickets. The air smelled clean after the rain. I closed my eyes, breathing it in. I had lost so much: love, safety, trust. But I still had truth. And maybe, in time, I could build something from that. When we returned to my room, my discharge papers were ready. I signed them with a shaky hand. As Lydia helped me pack my things, she smiled softly. "You're stronger than you think, Claire." I met her eyes. I didn't feel strong. Strength isn't how loud you fight, she said gently. It's how quietly you survive. Her words stayed with me long after I left the hospital. But deep down, I knew my story with Daniel wasn't finished yet. Because there was one more thing I needed. Not revenge, but closure. And to get it, I'd have to face him one last time. I sat in that hospital bed, the nurse's words echoing in my skull like a slow, endless thunder. Make it look like she didn't make it. I kept seeing the message over and over, as if my mind refused to believe it belonged to him, to my husband, the man who once held my hand through nights of fever, who whispered prayers over me when our daughter was born. My chest felt hollow, my pulse was a whisper. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I just stared at the wall as the heart monitor beside me drew its steady, cruel rhythm. Beep, beep, alive. For now. When he walked into the room, smiling, that same practiced smile, my stomach turned. He placed flowers by my bedside, lilies, my favorite. I wondered if he picked them out of love or guilt. How are you feeling, sweetheart? He asked, voice soft, eyes pretending to care. And I looked straight into those eyes, the same ones I once called home. I am alive, I said quietly. Lucky me, right? Something flickered in his gaze just for a second. Panic? Guilt? Then it vanished under that calm, charming mask. He kissed my forehead. His lips were cold. That night I didn't sleep. I waited for the nurse to come back on duty, the one brave enough to show me the truth. When she returned, I whispered, "Please, help me get the report. His texts, anything. I need proof." Her eyes softened. She said, "You don't need to prove it to anyone. You just need to survive." And something about that broke me open, because survival, something I'd always taken for granted, suddenly felt like an act of defiance. So I did. I waited. I pretended. Every time he came to visit, I smiled back. Every time he asked about my recovery, I thanked him. And when he signed the hospital forms, I quietly took a picture of them. Each signature, each timestamp. A woman learns how to fight quietly when the world teaches her she's safest in silence. By the time I was discharged, I had gathered enough to start over. Not revenge, not hate, just escape. I walked out of that hospital weaker than I'd ever been, but freer than I'd ever felt. And as I looked back once at the man waiting near the car with that same gentle smile, I realized sometimes the bravest thing a woman can do isn't to scream for help. It's to walk away from the person who tried to end her story and start writing her own. For weeks after I left, I lived like a ghost. A small rented room, no name on the door, just me, my shaking hands, and silence. I didn't tell anyone, not my parents, not even my best friend. I wasn't ready to hear the words, "How could he?" I already knew how, because he could. Then, one morning, the phone rang. It was the hospital.
They wanted to verify something on my insurance form. They said it didn't match. My heart skipped. I asked, "What do you mean?" The clerk hesitated. "Ma'am, the form your husband submitted was a request to terminate life support." My blood ran cold. That was the moment I stopped hiding, because silence protects monsters. So I gathered everything: the photo of his text, the hospital's report, the nurse's statement, and I went to the police, not shaking, not crying, just calm, like the quiet before dawn. When they arrested him, he still smiled, still tried to charm the officers. But when they read the message out loud, "Make it look like she didn't make it," the room fell silent. No one looked at him the same again. His mask finally broke. News spread fast in our small town. The same neighbors who once envied our love story now whispered, "She's the one he tried to kill." I should have felt humiliated, but I didn't. I felt seen, finally. He lost his job, his friends vanished, and the house, our house, was sold to pay for his lawyer. I didn't attend the trial. I didn't need to. Because some justice isn't about prison. It's about truth. And truth was finally louder than his lies. It took me a long time to sleep without checking the door twice, to drink tea without trembling, to trust silence again. But slowly, I did. I moved to a small town by the sea, far from the street where my life once ended and began again. Every morning, I sit on the porch with my cup of tea, watching the sunrise paint the waves gold, and I remind myself, I survived the man who wanted me gone. The nurse who saved me still calls sometimes. She says, "You give other women courage." But I tell her the truth. I didn't survive because I was brave. I survived because someone chose to tell the truth. One act of honesty saved my life. And now, every time fear whispers, I answer it softly. You couldn't kill me then. You won't own me now. I planted a small garden behind my cottage, just roses, because even the thorns have purpose. Sometimes the people we trust the most hold the sharpest knives behind their smiles. But pain, it teaches us who we really are. I used to believe love meant saving someone. Now I know sometimes love means saving yourself. If you were in my place, would you have had the strength to walk away even after he tried to take everything? Tell me in the comments. And if my story reached your heart, stay with me. There are more truths I still need to tell.